Price is Right. I'm the luckiest guy in the world, I'm telling you.
On live TV, a college student's Plinko chip landed in the jackpot 3 times in a row. But before she could drop her 4th chip, the studio went dark. A producer yelled, "The game is fixed!" and everything stopped. For 15 minutes, no one spoke. The audience sat in frozen silence. America's most trusted game show nearly collapsed live on air. What went wrong? Who rigged the game? And how close did CBS come to pulling the plug? If you thought The Price is Right was all smiles and lucky guesses, what we're about to uncover will change your mind, because behind the bright lights is a history of rigged games, scandals, lawsuits, and cover-ups they don't want you to know. Game show scandals and rigged past. The Price is Right has long been seen as one of the most trusted game shows on television, a beacon of fairness amid an industry once rocked by scandal. But the show's legacy isn't as squeaky clean as it seems. Behind the scenes, its history is tangled with manipulation, quiet controversies, and moments that nearly expose the cracks beneath its glossy surface. The game show industry itself faced a major reckoning in the 1950s. That decade saw the rise of high-stakes quiz shows like 21, the $64,000 Question, and Dotto, which promised real competition and intellect. But in 1958, everything unraveled when a Dotto contestant discovered a notebook revealing answers had been fed to a rival. Investigations followed, and a cascade of scandals exposed widespread rigging. The most infamous was 21's Charles Van Doren, who admitted he was coached and rehearsed to win. These revelations destroyed public trust. Congress responded with the 1960 amendment to the Communications Act, making it illegal to rig any game show aired on TV. Networks panicked. Nearly all quiz shows vanished overnight. Yet The Price is Right, first pitched in 1956, managed to survive the fallout. Unlike rigged quiz shows, its format relied on consumer knowledge, guessing the retail prices of everyday goods. It seemed honest, grounded, and low stakes. The simplicity gave it credibility at a time when viewers were skeptical of anything that felt too rehearsed or intellectual. Still, the show wasn't entirely immune to behind-the-scenes control. In its original NBC run, the pilot went so poorly, host Bill Cullen crashed into a wall after a missed cue, that the network tried to pay the producers to walk away. But creators Bob Stewart and Mark Goodson insisted the show had potential. Once it aired, it quickly proved popular, and the format's perceived fairness kept it safe during an industry-wide purge. Demands of the producers were stretched at best. The prize packages were always considered. The sponsor products got their star billing on the stage. Contestant pickings were made with excitement and pacing in consideration. They were not illegal. They intruded upon the territory of entertainment and authenticity. The temerity of CBS was almost tested in 2008. During a game of Plinko, a contestant dropped 3 chips, all of which landed squarely in the $10,000 slot. Something was amiss, and crew members sprang into action. They figured out that fishing lines used in a commercial shoot had inadvertently rigged the entire board. CBS brought the taping to a halt, reshot the segment, and let the contestant keep her winnings. Had this blunder hit the air, dire consequences could have arisen for CBS, potentially decades after the quiz show scandals. Then there were the scandals regarding host Bob Barker. For all his charm on camera, Barker fought legal battles for years. Models and staff accused him of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation from the mid-1990s into the 2000s. Many lawsuits and hush-money settlements painted a disturbing picture of the show's backstage culture. Though he professed his innocence, the damaging allegations sully the show's reputation. And other cracks were appearing recently. In 2025, Rumors of Drew Carey's erratic behavior and a toxic backstage environment emerged, thus continuing a troubling pattern. Once again, CBS was accused of turning a blind eye to these issues in an attempt to protect the brand. The Price is Right was able to survive some of the scandals that took down its 1950s predecessors, but it was far from being immune to these scandals. The game show world has always existed in a dichotomy between entertainment and ethics. The Price is Right, for all its bright lights and cheerful songs, has had to navigate that same path as well. But even with the quiz show scandals in the distant past and legal safeguards in place, it took only one overlooked detail in 2008 to prove just how easy it was for everything to go wrong again. Live, and in front of millions. The $30,000 Plinko disaster. It started like any other feel-good moment on The Price is Right. In 2008, a college student stepped up to play Plinko, the fan-favorite game of chance, where contestants drop chips down a pegged board in hopes of landing in a high-paying slot. As she released her first chip, it zigzagged its way into the $10,000 space. The crowd exploded. When her second chip followed the same exact path, the audience's reaction became even louder. Then, impossibly, her third chip landed in the $10,000 slot again. By her third drop, she had already racked up $30,000, a sum rarely seen in the game's history. The studio was electric, and the moment felt like a miracle unfolding on national television. But then, everything stopped. Just as she lifted her arm to drop the fourth chip, a floor director sprinted onto the stage and slapped the chip out of her hand mid-air. The cheers turned into gasps. The game screeched to a halt. The curtains dropped, the lights shut off, and a stunned silence fell over the studio audience. What had just happened? Had the contestant cheated? Had the game been compromised? No one, not even host Drew Carey, seemed to know what to say. Behind the scenes, chaos broke out. Producers and technical staff huddled urgently, reviewing footage and whispering in corners. Drew Carey quietly stepped away from the Plinko set, and the contestant was asked to sit quietly at the front of the stage. For over 15 minutes, the studio remained in total confusion. Staffers scrambled to uncover the cause of the uncanny $10,000 streak that had just taken place live in front of millions. The answer wasn't sabotage from a contestant. It was something much dumber and much more dangerous. 2 weeks before that episode was taped, the studio had taken a short break in production. During that downtime, the marketing team had used the stage to film a commercial for The Price is Right video game. To make the ad exciting and guarantee big wins, the crew had secretly rigged the Plinko board. They had stretched thin, nearly invisible fishing lines along both sides of the $10,000 slot. These lines acted like subtle bumpers, helping guide the chips toward the center. An age-old marketing trick, harmless during the set of the fake commercial. But for the real game tape, nobody took the lines off. The producers, stage managers, camera crew, and Drew Carey himself did not realize the board was still rigged until, suddenly, the contestant dropped 3 impossible drops in succession. By that point, it was too late. The panic set in. At least some of it was concern about being embarrassed. The other half was concern for legality. Since the 1950s game show rigging scandals, it has been unlawful under federal law to manipulate any outcome of the game show. Any question of a game being fixed could incur lawsuits, fines, or cancellation, if not all three. The stakes were high. It would appear that CBS's standards and practices made their decisions quickly and exercised caution in doing so. They permitted her to keep the $30,000 in winnings from the rigged game because, so they argued, She had not cheated and had no idea that the board had been tampered with. The decision probably saved CBS from a public relations nightmare or an immediate lawsuit from the contestant. Then, the crew pulled the fishing lines, reshot the game from the top, and had the contestant play again for all 5 chips, of which this time she put forth a valiant effort and won only $3,000. The first segment was buried for good. Only on December 5th, 2008, did the audience see the polished, refilmed version of the episode. No chaos, no slap of the chips, no cameras on the darkened studio. To a home audience, The Price is Right almost blew up in front of a live audience. The story was buried for years until Drew Carey, the host, broke it out in a 2021 interview, explaining in detail how he almost lost his job over it. And yet, this wasn't even the most shocking time the show had to freeze production over a seemingly perfect game. Because just a few months later, a man stepped up with a showcase bid so accurate, producers thought he must have been part of a cheat code from the inside. The bid that froze production. In the long and colorful history of The Price is Right, there have been lucky guesses, clever strategies, and memorable wins, but none sparked more suspicion than what happened on one seemingly routine episode in 2008. A retired weatherman named Terry stood at the final podium during the showcase showdown. The prizes included a karaoke machine, a pool table, and a 17-foot camper. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when it came time to make his final bid, Knias looked straight ahead and calmly guessed $23,743. When Drew Carey revealed the actual retail price, the studio fell into stunned silence. Knias had nailed the exact total, down to the last dollar. A perfect bid on the showcase. Not $1 off, not even a penny. It was something that had never happened before in the modern version of the show, and something that, quite frankly, producers had believed was statistically impossible. Behind the scenes, panic erupted. The show's longtime producer, Kathy Greco, reportedly ran off stage in disbelief. Drew Carey himself was visibly shaken. Later, he admitted he was furious and delivered the winning announcement through clenched teeth. To him, and many on staff, it looked like a fix. For a moment, it seemed like The Price is Right had been hacked from the inside. Producers paused everything. For 45 minutes, nothing moved. They double-checked the item prices. They reviewed footage. They scoured for any signs of cheating, collusion, or electronic interference. Was there a mole on the production team? Had someone leaked the prices? Did Terry work with someone backstage? But no matter how hard they searched, they found nothing. Knias maintained his innocence. He had not cheated. He hadn't spoken to anyone on the staff. He hadn't even interacted with the other contestant in the showcase. What he had done, however, was something entirely unexpected. He studied, obsessively. Through interviews, Knias revealed that before appearing on the show, he had spent months watching The Price is Right religiously with his wife. They did their share of note-taking, memory of prices, as well as tracking which items went together most often in showcase bundles. There was one interesting thing Knias noticed. Lots of the same items consistently came up, often featuring very similar or even identical prices. He somehow reverse-engineered the show since he was treating the game just like a math problem. And the number 23,743? That wasn't random either. According to Knias, he comprised meaningful digits close to his anniversary date and his wife's birth month into one number that might be paired with. This was a calculation based on instinct and memorized price data. Pure calculation, not trickery. The producers didn't like it. Even if Knias did not break the rules, He shattered their illusion of unpredictability that proved to be dangerous. For decades, the show would run under the idea that no contestant could ever memorize or guess their way to a perfect showcase bid. That notion had just been obliterated before millions of viewers. From now on, the rules of the game changed dramatically. The producers began to shake up combinations of more items as part of the gameplay. More often, they would rotate and introduce new products, as well as price tags for this purpose. The straightforward purpose was so that no one would ever be able to study his way into making the perfect showcase bid again. The NES flaw had been exposed in the system, and this was something the show could not afford to let happen again. Most fascinating about this incident is not just the bid, but all it throws up about how tightly The Price is Right is managed. Beyond spinning wheels and smiling hosts lies a machine dependent on balance, perception, and precise control. Nice didn't cheat, but he proved something even more unnerving: that the game's structure wasn't as airtight as it seemed. If one man with a notepad could nearly break the show, what else was quietly unraveling behind the scenes? When the show falls apart. The stage of The Price is Right beams with color, confetti, and crowd-pleasing fanfare. But what happens beyond that stage is far from polished. While technical errors and rigged moments have occasionally brought production to a halt, there's another layer of the show's chaos that viewers never see. The daily scramble to hold together a live show that's far more fragile than it looks. Episodes have gone off the rails not just from cheating scares or flawed games, but due to the unpredictable, sometimes absurd nature of live television. Technical glitches, miscommunications, and awkward misfires have haunted the show for decades. And while most are edited out before airing, some moments are simply too messy to hide entirely. In one notorious 2024 episode, announcer Rich Fields accidentally referred to an HP laptop as a Dell. While a slip like that might seem harmless on any other program, The Price is Right operates under a strict rule. If a prize is described incorrectly, the contestant wins the item as described, not what was actually shown. In this case, the contestant had overbid and should have lost. But because Fields said Dell and not HP, producers were forced to honor the win. The mistake cost the show thousands. Other moments were less expensive but far more bizarre. In 2024, a contestant famously bid just $10 during a showcase showdown. Not $1,000. Not $10,000. Just $10. In one of the highest stakes moments of the entire game. Producers were left slack-jawed as the bid was locked in and aired without edit. Another contestant, playing the pushover game, ignored every shout from the audience and violently shoved every single block off the platform, missing the correct price entirely. The spectacle drew laughs online, but backstage, crew members were stunned. One stagehand reportedly muttered, "It's like they've never seen the show before," as if they were contestants trying to go their own way. In the now viral moment of a 2024 Safecrackers game, Drew Carey had to repeat the rules 4 times, while the player kept trying to input numbers before being told to. Carey eventually looked off camera, visibly frustrated. The audience's mood shifted from enthusiastic to uncomfortable as the crew scrambled to save the segment. And while the players can be unpredictable, sometimes the problem lies with the show. Prize packages, once the hallmark of The Price is Right, have come under fire for what fans have called budget shrinkage. In late 2024, fans were left slack-jawed when one showcase held in it nothing more than a spree of trips to New Orleans, Iceland, and Ireland, incredibly far from the norm for a show that used to offer private islands and sports cars. Another won a modest jewelry set, a cheap sound system, and a Mitsubishi Mirage, a car widely mocked online as the least impressive ever featured. Social media exploded with complaints, some speculating that CBS was stockpiling money for the show's upcoming 10,000th episode. Others wondered whether CBS was simply running out of ideas altogether. Even at times of success, silent costs may behave as a shadow. In 2013, a teacher, Carey H., won $157,000 Audi R8 Spider, one of the most spectacular prizes in the show's history. She thought she had struck gold until taxes put her prize on a $61,000 burden. Carey had to make a choice: incur a huge debt to cover taxes, or just walk away from the win. She was not the first to exit in silence, nor would she be the last. But even production chaos and on-air gaffes paled in comparison to what was brewing in the show's dressing rooms and executive offices. A decades-long scandal that began with whispers, ended in lawsuits, and forever changed how America saw its most trusted host. The Bob Barker lawsuits. For over 30 years, Bob Barker was the iconic host of The Price is Right, known for his charm, signature sign-off, and seemingly wholesome image. But behind the scenes, a series of lawsuits revealed a much darker reality. One marked by allegations of coercion, discrimination, and a toxic workplace culture that CBS tried to contain for years. The first major controversy erupted in 1994, when longtime model Diane Parkinson filed an $8 million lawsuit claiming Barker had coerced her into a 3-year indecent relationship under threat of losing her job. Barker denied the allegations, calling the relationship consensual, and even claiming she had pursued him. Though Parkinson dropped the suit a year later due to emotional stress and legal costs, the public image of The Price is Right was permanently shaken. In 1995, model Holly Hallstrom was fired, officially for weight gain caused by medication. But she claimed it was retaliation for refusing to defend Barker publicly during the Parkinson scandal. Hallstrom filed a lawsuit accusing Barker of age and medical discrimination, wrongful termination, and emotional abuse. The legal battle lasted nearly a decade, with Barker's team reportedly offering settlements in exchange for her silence. Hallstrom refused and ultimately received a multi-million-dollar settlement in 2005, without a gag order. Others who supported Hallstrom faced consequences too. Models Janice Pennington and Kathleen Bradley, who testified on her behalf, were fired. Bradley, the show's first black permanent model, later spoke about the racial dynamics behind her dismissal. Production assistants Linda Riegert and Cheryl Paris, who also backed Hallstrom, lost their jobs. Former staffer Sharon Frim filed a separate harassment and retaliation suit, further exposing the hostile atmosphere behind the show's happy exterior. In 2011, model Lanisha Cole brought to bear more legal troubles. She sued for indecent harassment, wrongful termination, and named Barker and the producers. Her case proved that the toxic culture hadn't ended with Barker's 2007 retirement. It continued on amid the culture that Barker helped shape. Perhaps the most disturbing allegations were about race. Hallstrom said that black contestants were marked with a B on call sheets and were often called down later in the show to conceal them. Hallstrom also alleged that Barker would pull back from hugging black contestants, laughing it off while reinforcing a troubling pattern. In another lawsuit, fellow contestant coordinator Deborah Curling, a 24-year veteran of the show, sued CBS post-Barker for racial discrimination and hostile work environment. This reflected what many former staffers were now speaking out about. The culture behind The Price is Right had long been toxic, sheltered by secrecy, silence, and legal maneuvering. During the 1990s and 2000s, too, CBS tried hard to suppress the stories, settling with people and getting them to sign NDAs so that CBS could keep these allegations out of the spotlight. But as more cases came out and whistleblowers began to come forward, the network was no longer able to control the narrative. A smiling, friendly face stood in stark contrast to what many former employees experienced behind the scenes. And while Barker's era may have ended, the show's new host would soon face scrutiny of his own, proof that old habits are hard to break, even on the most beloved stage in television. The culture CBS tried to hide. Behind the cheerful games and flashing lights of The Price is Right was a workplace marked by tension, exclusion, and silence. While millions saw joy on screen, insiders faced a far different reality, one that CBS worked hard to conceal. Troubling revelations began surfacing in the 1990s, with lawsuits alleging harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. These weren't isolated events. A clear pattern emerged. Credible claims were downplayed or quietly settled, and CBS routinely followed a strategy of denial and delay. Protecting the show's image and its profits came first. Much of the controversy centered around host Bob Barker, whose influence shaped the show's internal culture. Multiple women who filed complaints said CBS dismissed their concerns or settled quietly to avoid damaging the brand. Staff who supported these women often found themselves demoted or fired, a clear warning to others. Silence was expected. The toxic culture didn't end with Barker's retirement. In 2007, veteran staffer Deborah Curling sued CBS, citing racial discrimination and retaliation. She claimed black contestants were treated differently, selected less often, celebrated less enthusiastically. Speaking out, she said, damaged her career. Her case highlighted that the issues were deeper than any one person. They were systemic. CBS consistently fought these lawsuits, painting complaints as isolated or unfounded. Settlements often came with strict NDAs, shielding the network from public scrutiny. Internally, the company focused less on change and more on containment. Later revelations by whistleblowers brought to light the inner workings of the show. Indeed, the selection of contestants and camera time were subtly skewed. Diversity came to mean window dressing rather than substantive inclusion. Anyone who did not fit certain TV-friendly criteria about race, size, age, or disability was unlikely to make an appearance. Such standards were never written down, but were broadly understood by the show's staff. The new host, Carey, brought into the fold in 2007, would find himself embroiled in controversy as well. By 2025, reports painted a picture of intimidation backstage, in which mood swings and temper tantrums on the part of Carey instilled fear and uncertainty among those working with him. Not directly accused of Barker's abuses, such behavior followed the familiar refrain: pressure, silence, and escape from accountability. Prioritizing image rather than integrity was the internal response process of CBS. According to a former assistant producer, the network operated an all-inclusive wildlife review system for optics-related incidents. Complaints, visible mistakes, or buzz of mistreatment were all assessed according to the threat level they represented. If it seemed containable, it was buried. Otherwise, spin control was activated. The goal was simple: keep The Price is Right looking like a happy, fair game show, no matter what went on off-camera. But over the years, the illusion was beginning to crack. Social media allowed contestants and former employees to share their stories. Discrimination, favoritism, and manipulation behind the scenes were finding their ways into the public space. Also, strange edits, inconsistent contestant energy, and mismatched prize values were already being seen by viewers. The whole structure was becoming very thin. In a new age of transparency, CBS's long-standing concealment of cultural torments within The Price is Right became difficult to justify. Lawsuits, whistleblower disclosures, and digital platforms were gradually pulling back the curtain to expose that the joy so visible on screen often came at a human price, with that real price being paid behind the scenes. And what happened next, on a day that started with cheers and ended in stunned silence, nearly brought the whole empire crashing down. Drew Carey's 2025 Meltdown. By 2025, Drew Carey had hosted The Price is Right for nearly 18 years. Known for his laid-back charm and steady presence, Carey was considered a worthy successor to Bob Barker. But behind the scenes, cracks had started to form, and by spring, those cracks split wide open. Crew members first noticed changes in late 2024. Carey's mood shifted unpredictably. Some days he was upbeat and engaging. Other days he isolated himself or arrived late, irritable and withdrawn. At first, staff chalked it up to stress. But by early 2025, his erratic behavior began disrupting production. In February, things took a dramatic turn. During a routine taping, Carey abruptly walked off set mid-game, leaving contestants on stage and cameras rolling. Production was paused for 45 minutes. When he returned, he resumed without explanation. The crew was shaken. Silent signals, green light for a good day, red for a bad one, were adopted to help staff navigate his moods. Some veteran crew members quietly quit, citing a toxic work environment. The tipping point came on March 21st. During a double-episode taping, Carey misread prize values and interrupted a contestant's celebration to correct his own mistake. After a commercial break, he reportedly threw cue cards, stormed off set, and accused producers of sabotaging him. Crew members say he yelled, "Let them find another clown to spin the wheel." Audio of the outburst, described as hostile and aggressive, was captured by a boom mic. Some staff began filming on their phones, fearing a full breakdown. Carey didn't return to finish the episode. A voiceover closed the show, and CBS edited the incident out. Behind the closed doors of CBS, executives were in frantic meetings, even as they attempted to nip the fallout in the bud. Rumors spread quickly. Anonymous posts circulated, claiming that Carey was having meltdowns practically every day while on set. One memo leaked from Fremantle Media stated, "Escalating host-related issues affecting taping consistency." Soon, all 7 crew members filed claims seeking legal representation to sue for verbal abuse and emotional distress resulting from Carey's actions. Fans were not blind to it all. Episodes that aired late March and early April had sudden jumps, awkward pauses, as well as energy shifts that seemed to hint at the suspicion that something was amiss. As far as the internet was concerned, idle speculation about his mental well-being and whether he would actually be staying on the show made the rounds. Carey's public address in April did not clear much of the air. The short video saw him admit to a rough couple of months and needing a reset. He thanked the crew, gave love to the show, but critics found that one scant. CBS did not touch the other noisy allegations that added to the ambiance of being ill at ease. While the most troubling part of the crisis came with The Price is Right's most serious crisis since the decades-old Bob Barker lawsuits, this scandal was different from one's past in that it unfolded in full view of the public, in real time, and was amplified via social media. Control of the messaging was elusive to CBS. Producers began internal contingency planning. Conversations were held regarding potential guest hosts and interim replacements. Carey seemed uncertain to remain with the show as heartbroken fans wondered whether The Price is Right would make it through with its trusted face now unraveling in front of the cameras. If you thought The Price is Right was the safest, happiest show on TV, think again. From accidental rigging to million-dollar lawsuits, what you see on stage is only half the story. Let us know in the comments. Should The Price is Right still be trusted? Or is it time to change the channel? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the secrets behind your favorite shows. And if you want more hidden scandals in plain sight, click the next video on screen now.